Hello, welcome to another World of UX podcast. This is your host, Dr. Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. Welcome, those of you joining us for the first time. Recording this on Memorial Day, a holiday in the USA. I'm going to be on the succinct side today. We're going to make this a quick one and just really share some factoids associated with today's topic. I might elaborate here and there, but for the most part, this is going to be one of those faster episodes. So again, thanks for those of you taking the time to listen. Those of you listening for the first time, welcome to the World of UX podcast with your 30 plus year UX veteran, Dr. Darren Hood. We have been talking to you from the perspective of a series entitled Harsh Realities of UX Maturity. Might stray a little bit on that title, but still getting the same message across. We're looking at UX maturity from a broad perspective. A lot of people learn about UX maturity from the perspective that it's about the organization. It's about how much you are accepted, how much leadership support you have, how easier it is to get the work done in your work environment, things of that nature. And we were sold that bill of goods for a very long time. And we missed out on over 80% of what UX maturity actually relates to. And that's just from a topical perspective. I'm getting into the weeds and I'm looking at a lot of different areas that are impacted by UX maturity, reflective of UX maturity. And each of these sub items that I am presenting, if you give attention to them, if you manage them, and yes, UX maturity needs to be managed. If you don't, it will manage you. That's a losing proposition. But if you pay attention to and address these different areas of UX maturity, you vault the discipline forward. So today, we're going to talk to you briefly, just sharing a bunch of factoids and elaborating again here and there about the topic of UX maturity and the leadership void. UX maturity and the leadership void. Now, a little bit of history. And something that a lot of people overlook. There are people, I've come across people lacking UX maturity, but still trying to present themselves as being somebody that's well further along than what they really are. That's a UX maturity problem. Little tidbit there for you. But I come across so many people that know nothing about UX history at all. They've been around for about 5 years. I've seen people who have been around for 3 to 5 years, and they act like that makes up all of UX history. That could not be further from the truth. So please pay strict attention to some of these factoids. I've been around since 1995. I've seen the ebbs and flows. I've seen the different changes. I've seen the corruption of the discipline from its root core, its root causes. We know what it's about, and we address it, trying to help people to recognize them, give them attention, and do the things that can help to overcome them because they are problematic. So here's your history. I'm going to start out right here. Dating back to about 2009, 2010. And prior to that, everybody did all the things. You didn't have at least masses of people who were doing UX maturity, or you didn't have masses of people that were working on UX research, for example. That was something that came along a little later, and we'll talk about that another time. I don't want to get off the beaten path, so I won't address that in detail today. But prior to 2010, if you were a UXer, the vast majority, that to the extent that people who were not were outliers and you didn't even have to concern yourself with that. But if you were a UX professional prior to that, you did design, you did research, you did strategy. And just for clarification's sake, when I say that people who were doing UX design prior to 2010, it was actual problem solving. It was not visual design. Visual designers were a separate group of people that UX people handed their wireframes off to put the presentation layer on tops of things. It was a few years later, another historical fact that people do not know, it was a few years later because a lot of visual designers were trying to press their way into UX And that's when the whole UX slash UI thing started, that misuse of that combo acronym started, and they used that lack of UX maturity to enter the discipline, to present themselves as being a part of UX, and then having leaders, which we're going to talk about today, who had low UX maturity, not knowing any better and accepting those people and bringing them in, and they started to redefine what UX was. That's what part of the UX slash UI bit is about, folks. It was about redefinition so that people could lay siege or further their siege of the discipline and then falsify their way into UX roles and turn UX into something that it is not. We're still suffering from that to this day. But I'll finally get this point out I'm trying to make. Back to 2009, 2010, when companies started bringing UX work in-house from a corporate standpoint, because a lot of that work was being handed off to, farmed out to creative agencies for the most part. So that trend began about that time. And when corporations started to bring UX work in-house, they needed somebody to run the teams. I talk about this all the time. We're going to talk about it at length with several factoids here tonight. So they began to bring, because they needed somebody to run the teams, but they couldn't have these people in the UX departments a lot of times running the teams, at least in their mind, they couldn't. So they began to hire people that they felt brought leadership to the table, and they began to hire these people who were actually unqualified to run the UX teams. Why do I say these people were unqualified? Whereas they were qualified from a leadership standpoint, when people had low UX maturity levels, they didn't understand really what it was going to take. They didn't understand what the agencies were doing to run their UX operations. And they just put, as we commonly say, butts in seats. They began to just hire somebody to fill the role. They needed somebody to fill the role, so they hired somebody to fill the role. And so going from about 2009, 2010 to about 2015, that became the norm. The vast majority of people running UX teams, and to this day still, the vast majority of people running UX teams are actually unqualified. If you looked at them from a UX maturity standpoint, if you looked at them for where they would qualify as an individual contributor, a lot of those same people were entry-level folks. So you've got the equivalent of entry-level folks, or even worse, some people who didn't even have that. It's interesting, I think in my history, my best boss, the best boss I ever had in my career was a non-UXer. So I'm not saying that having a non-UXer running a UX team is an automatic loss, or you're not automatically going to suffer because of that. The company that I worked at that did that, a very large company in the world from world standard perspectives, but he knew what he didn't know. He knew what he was hired to do. And I was hired because he knew he didn't know how to do it. And I was brought in to help build that team's UX practice stateside for that large organization. And we succeeded because he stayed in his lane. So this is something that a lot of these people I'm talking about who come in, the unqualified people who come in to run UX teams, these are losing propositions most of the time because he knew he had low UX maturity level and he was not trying to tell us what to do from a UX perspective. He left that up to me. These people are not doing that. These people don't know what they don't know, or they know what they don't know and they don't care. So as a result, because they put on their Dunning-Kruger cape and they go out and they step out and they try to run the UX teams, knowing that they have no idea, in many cases, they have no idea what they're doing, but they refuse to back down. They make hiring decisions that are bad. That person hired me knowing that he didn't know, but he knew that I knew business. See, that was the key. He knew that he was bringing in somebody who knew UX. He could tell that I knew what I was talking about. He could tell that I knew my stuff. But he also was bringing somebody in, and a lot of people in UX lack business acumen. They don't know how business is supposed to be run. I knew how to communicate with people in leadership from a business standpoint. He knew that I had what it took to do what they needed in that role. A lot of these people with low UX maturity that are running UX teams and low practitioner acumen, they just, and a lot of them don't even know business either. They didn't have what that person had. That person had the model for if you're going to have someone that doesn't know UX to run UX operations, he was the perfect model. He was a template for how that's supposed to be done. Are people trying to figure that out? Absolutely not. No, they're not. They just, again, they want butts in seats. So fast forward to 2015, picking back up there, the trend of having non-UXers running UX teams was in full effect mode. And again, even more so today, and not following the model such as what I was talking about. So now in 2024, the vast majority of UX teams are run by people who've never been in the trenches when it comes to UX work. They don't know how things are done. Some of them know how to talk business. Some of them don't. Many of them do, but they don't know how to traverse where UX comes into play. If you look at a Venn diagram of these people, the part where they overlap UX is extremely small. And that's problematic, and it has detrimental impact on UX maturity. These people understand the buzzwords, but they don't understand the operation when it comes to UX. They know how to politic to some degree, but they don't know how to navigate. Again, they lack personal UX maturity, one of the 5 aspects of UX maturity, one of the 5 silos of UX maturity, if you will, that I've been bringing up from time to time. Many of these people never transitioned into the discipline, so they don't know what it takes. They don't know what we're doing. They have absolutely no idea how to manage more experienced practitioners. Hence, if you will do what something I have done, and you go from org to 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 org, and you evaluate how UX operations are structured from an org chart perspective, I actually saw, when I talked about this before, there was one organization in particular that I'll use as an example where the UX leadership, former visual designers, former creative directors, former art directors, bad choice for running a UX team, by the way, because they are coming from an arena that's marked by ego. The visual design world is grounded in ego, whereas UX, you have to be ego-free. The more ego-free you are, the more success you can have. You have to be selfless to excel in UX, whereas in the visual design world, those people are often full of themselves. In UX, you do not own, you're not married to your solutions. You own it, but you're not married to it. These people in visual design, they're married to what they do. When you critique what a UX person has to say, we can just have further discussions about that and then try to validate or do research to validate. We can explain why we give such recommendations. On the visual design side of the house, that doesn't exist at all. That simply is not a thing. Or even if it is, it's a battle of subjectivity that people just keep bringing their aspect of subjectivity to the plate, and they just go back and forth and they bicker about their subjectivity. That doesn't exist in mature UX environments. So it's really interesting. So I looked at this one organization, and he was a former visual designer, and they had anywhere between 80 to 100 people in their UX organization, and over 90 to 95% of the people on their entire UX team were former visual designers. At least. I really can only think of one person offhand that comes to mind that had experience in UX that was not part of a visual design operation. That's really interesting. So you had all of these people. I mean, how many of those people actually transition into the discipline? Many people, everybody's welcome. You want to come into UX, that's fine, but you have to transition in because this is a different animal. You're going from being a visual designer or whatever you were coming into an arena where it requires you to be or become a scientist to excel at this work. UX is a science, folks. It's a science. If you don't transition into becoming a scientist, that's why you get so many people who are doing the spaghetti tossing. That's why you get so many people who are not grounded in fundamentals. That's why you get so many people who know nothing and have never performed a heuristic analysis because they don't understand the discipline and they don't care to. You talk to people all the time. You see these people all the time. How do I break into UX? That is a quote. I actually hate that phrase because it has, from a metaphorical perspective, it has an underlying tone of coming in by any means necessary, forcing your way in, not earning it, not transitioning. And so very, very bad. So in addition to the fact that people just like that have no idea how to manage more experienced practitioners, so you don't see them on their teams, this directly impacts hiring and UX team operations. It results in people being surrounded by and eagerly promoting other unqualified people. You'll see that a lot in these environments that lack UX maturity. These people, the former creative and art directors, they have a tendency to hire people in their own image, which actually has direct impact and detrimental impact on the ability to innovate, because they'll innovate on look and feel. They won't interact on function. And UX is more about function. Do we care about aesthetics? Yes, but it's more about function than it is about aesthetics, and people need to understand that. So again, these people, they'll hire people in their own image, indirectly sacrificing the impact value and the benefits of collective domain knowledge, and they also doom and limit their teams to UX theater. This is what happens when you have or are subjected to the leadership void. In addition to being incapable of representing the discipline properly, these faux UX leaders also lack the ability and desire to properly represent the people that report to them. They don't really care. They don't care about these people's development. They don't care about representing them the right way. And so that has detrimental impact on UX maturity and on the discipline at large. We know, folks, as we begin to wrap up here, told you it was going to be short today, UX is operating at an extreme deficit these days. Even in mature organizations, there's always a pit somewhere. There's always a pocket that is not doing their absolute best. And that's okay. You can always upskill. You can always bring people up. You can always pull people up to where you are if you are higher, so to speak. But in order to resolve these problems, those in leadership roles, and I'm not saying that these people all need to lose their jobs or anything of that sort. People are where they are. They're who they are. They're where they are. They're what they are. But in order to resolve this problem, it's going to take some courage. And people in leadership roles that are not qualified, they need to go back to the future. People need to take time, look back. I talk about it all the time, my UX cycle of excellence. People can go back, start plugging gaps. Plug gaps. Understand what your current state is, find out what the gaps are, and develop. Develop. If that were to happen, do you realize the boost that the discipline would get as a whole? Do you realize how much that would help us to vault things forward? Do you realize how the discipline would be taken forward, that it would benefit? Do you realize how much teams would start to get better at their craft? Do you realize how people would start to accept those who are more skilled than themselves? Because a lot of people fight against other folks that are more skilled than themselves because they go into self-preservation mode and they don't see themselves as coexisting with people that are more qualified. And people who are hearing me say that right now, you might not understand it today. The more skilled you get, if things were to stay the same, oh, you surely will understand it, because you have all these people, you see it all the time. They want to get into UX so bad that they never check and see if they're really qualified from an emotional intelligence standpoint to exist. I heard somebody say something last week that was fantastic. They said that UX was never really made for entry-level people. And what a phenomenal statement that was, because it was true. It is true. It was never really made. Is there room for entry-level people? Yes. Is there room for a whole lot of entry-level people? No. Because of what's at stake, because of what's required, you can always bring in newer people and help and groom them to become the mid-level people and set them on a path of excellence. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. But people spent so many years crying about how they need somebody to give them a chance that the entry-level people began to overrun the discipline. So many people were given a chance that the people who had already earned a chance got pushed out or were getting pushed out. And then the people who never really earned a chance, but got the chance, turned the discipline into something else entirely. And now all they do is sit around crying about what's happening to UX. But this is the bed that they made. And this is the bed that the leadership void facilitated, that they empowered. And so this is not a good thing. Everybody who has personal gaps, personal UX maturity gaps, needs to fill those gaps. And we need to be committed to doing that our entire career. You never arrive. I never arrived. We're always trying to look at ways to get better. We're always trying to look to identify gap. We deliberately work to find out where we can get better as it pertains to UX. And as we work to get better, everybody becomes better, everything becomes better, and the discipline becomes better. Remember, this discipline is still in its infantile state, which is why people could change it into something that it's not, because it's still forming. There's still all these new people that are coming in. People who, by the way, reject fundamentals. People who keep saying that those types of things are old school, that we don't need them anymore. And then they turn it into visual design. This is not a visual design. That's why folks need to stop saying UX/UI, because that was always a statement of bastardization. Let me repeat that. It didn't come out smoothly. I'm going to repeat it. When people use the UX/UI moniker, they are bastardizing the discipline. Stop. Folks need to stop doing that. Folks are not going to be happy about the damage being done to the discipline until it hits them square between their eyes. I'm telling you, I've been telling you, and people have been rejecting it. Many. Then there are some who wake up and they say, you know what? That guy was right all these years. Yeah, I was. I am. And other people are starting to figure that out. If you want the discipline to be healthy, if you want the discipline to be whole, and I have seen other disciplines become bastardized and turned into something that it's not. Instructional design, in particular, it is a figment of its former self. I don't want to see that happen to UX. I continue to fight the good fight, trying to keep that from happening, and one person at a time. That's how we get there. One person at a time. People always ask, how do you do it? One person at a time. One person at a time, people need to wake up. The people who are celebrities, they've reached UX celebrity status, need to drop their celebrity status. Are they going to do that? Probably not. I'm just telling you what needs to be done, whether it happens or not. They need to drop their celebrity status. The people who are drowning in the sycophantism that I talked about recently, people who are trying to get people to become their disciples and follow after them and only them, and don't support anything that anybody else does. Some people don't realize that they're in a sycophantic state until, in many cases, it's too late or a lot of damage has already been done. I know people, they have a ton of content, they do a lot of things, many of which are great, the stuff that they do, but they don't support anybody else. I'm telling you, go support other people. Go find other people worthy of support. Go and learn. I don't have everything that you need to be what you need to be. In UX, I'm just one part of a gigantic puzzle. And you ever notice that puzzle pieces are often usually the same size? Great metaphor, isn't it? Go and listen to other people. Go and see what they have to say. Go and see what they have to offer. Go and let them grow you. I use books as a metaphor. You don't just buy one book on a topic. There are several books on any given topic, all of which that will give you another vantage point that, when you pay attention, helps you to become your best you. That's part of how we get better. I'm telling you how we do it. People are always asking me how, and then they criticize me because I don't talk a lot about the how, which is actually not true. They confine me to a very small attention span in their own lives and then trick themselves into saying that I don't have anything to say about how to get better. And then their little sycophantic followers believe them when they tell them lies about what me and other people like me are doing. We have a lot of things to say about how to get better. They're just not paying attention to it. So don't fall for the sycophantism that is detrimentally impacting the discipline today. So folks need to fill your gaps. Be courageous. Don't be afraid to identify where you lack. Be aggressive, be assertive about finding out where you lack, and then use that same level of passion to work on deliberately getting better at your craft, being your best you. So folks need to acknowledge what they don't know. Again, deliberately work to triage. And then lastly, until this happens, until these things start to occur, the fallout from the leadership void will continue to exist. It will continue to evolve because it is evolving. It's getting worse. It will continue to mature, if you could call that maturity, that dysfunction, maturity, and we will continue to have to fight the good fight of faith to counter it. Folks, UX has a leadership void. UX maturity, if we subscribe to it the right way, will help to address the leadership void and help us to become better at who we are and what we do. Until then, again, this remains a fight. Folks, that's all the time we have for today. We are going to wrap up there. I told you I'd be relatively quick today, but thanks for taking the time to listen to the World of UX podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you are. We appreciate the support. I do not get a lot of support for this show. What? Really? Yeah, really. Especially from the sycophantic crowd, because I keep people from listening to the sycophants because they realize what in the world is going on. But at any rate, thank you for taking the time to listen today. Thank you for supporting the podcast. Don't forget about Kaizen Tees. I have not been talking about KaizenTees.com. Go out there and check out some of our merch. You can support the podcast by buying some of our merch, whether it's a coffee cup or a t-shirt or a hat or whatever it is. We got a lot of merchandise out there with some of the sayings and some of the things that we present on this show. And there's more stuff coming in the not too distant future. But we appreciate all the support that folks have had for us out there that you've given us. And we are asking for your support in the future. It will help us with the things that we're doing in this work, that this is a labor of love that we're doing. Nobody's paying us for any of these shows, for any of this work that we do for the UX community. We're doing it because it is needed. We're doing it because we care, not because we're trying to make a celebrity or reach celebrity status or anything of that sort. So that's why we do what we do. And I'm sure you understand what it is that we're doing. I hope you do understand what we're doing. But we're going to go ahead and sign off here, folks. Until next time, this is Dr. Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, wishing everybody all the best. And until next time, folks, happy UXing, everybody.